Another week, another episode, and another handful of awesome tools and resources to help you on your comms journey. We don't need to give too much of an explanation on the format, as I'm sure you know it by now, but Joe and I will share a tool or a resource that we're loving or finding very helpful at the moment. So Joe, over to you first.
Yeah, so I'm going to be bundling together a few different things today, but mainly we're talking about email. So first of all, Spark. So Spark is an email client. That's something which to me seems really obvious, but actually a lot of people don't have a clue what an email client is. So if you don't know, the chances are that the one that you're using is what was installed on your computer. So maybe you're using Outlook. It could be if you're using Gmail directly, then that is your email client through the web browser. Maybe you're using sort of Windows Mail or just Mail on a Mac. So you might be asking, if I can already get my email through this, why do I need another one? And that's a fair question. Though for me, 10 minutes using Outlook is enough for me to sort of throw my computer out the window. So any alternative is better. And given that email is a really big part of running my business, having something that works for me, works well, doesn't frustrate me is a really important thing, because I will use it probably for a couple of hours a day. So Spark is an email client. It's available on multiple platforms. So it wasn't the case for a while, but finally it's available on Windows as well as Mac, iOS, Android. And it syncs really nicely between them as well. So if you sign in with a new tablet, for example, it will get all of your email and everything immediately when you just sign in with one login, which is really helpful. So I'll try and rattle through the features nice and quickly, because there's a few, but these are the things that make it really helpful for me. So having one inbox with multiple accounts is really helpful. I know for a lot of people who use Gmail or Google Workspace and have several accounts, that having to switch between them can be really annoying.
Yeah.
So having them all there, but also being able to click on them individually if I just want to see one of them. And Spark also is really good at highlighting messages and sort of showing them as a priority if they're things that need actioning. If there's emails from someone I've not heard from before, it will highlight that and also give the option to block them if you don't want to hear again. Something which I know is available in Google's Inbox app, and I think probably in Gmail as well now, is the ability to snooze messages. But that's something that I've been doing in Spark for years, and just being able to quickly swipe on a message so that it will come back into my inbox later when I actually want to deal with it. And these swipes are really helpful as well. So you can customize what different swipes do. So I think the default is like a short swipe or archive, a long one or delete, and then you've got snooze and put in a category or a folder. And that's something I really like as well, because you can just quickly decide what you want to do with an email rather than having to move the mouse around too much or anything like that. You can just quickly swipe. So probably my favorite feature of Spark is that you can connect it to other things as well. So there are other tools and integrations. So for me, I have Spark connected to both Todoist and Trello, as well as to Google Drive, meaning that I can really easily take that information from that email and put it into these other services. So for Trello, I can literally, when I get a new email in, say from a potential client, I can click on the Trello button and that integration will work, that I can then create a new Trello card. It will have all their contact details. It will go straight into my project management board and then my sort of task management that I do daily as well, rather than having to just rely on my inbox to do that management for me or that organization. Or with Google Drive, for example, often I'll get a email which is just a receipt or an invoice, and I can really quickly save that as a PDF into Google Drive, into the folder where it needs to be with all my other invoices. So just obviously all of this is possible to some extent within other apps. I can copy and paste into Trello, or I can save as an attachment and make sure it goes in the right place and all that sort of thing. But just being able to do it quickly is really helpful for me, and it adds up those time-saving things. So with sending emails, Spark lets you schedule things, so that's quite helpful if you're sort of sending something really late at night. I can have it so that the default is it will send it the next morning, which is helpful and stops people seeing that you're working through the night, as that happens occasionally. You can also really easily create templates for emails in Spark as well, which is great because it will autofill the subject and the body of an email. You can have it highlight things that you need to change, like someone's name or something like that. So yeah, that's great. And that might be something that you want to use in your church as like a quick response. So for example, if you get emails from the church website, or you have common questions that come in, you can hit a keyboard shortcut, that template will come up and be auto-filled, and you can just tweak it if you need to, and send it. And then another thing which can be really helpful for churches as well is there's some really good collaboration features for like team inboxes. So that's not something I've needed to use so much myself since it's been introduced, but you can really easily share replies or draft messages with other people, and it just makes managing that team inbox a lot easier than it can be in other tools. There's also, and I kind of hate to mention it, but there's some AI features that are built into it now. So that can really help you to quickly draft text and responses to people. But I think that AI is something we're going to cover separately in another episode when we can bring ourselves to do it. So the last thing to mention then is the notifications in Spark. So it's quite intelligent with notifications. You can choose which types of messages you want to actually interrupt your day, or some of them, they'll go in your inbox, you'll see them when you'll open it, but it won't actually disturb you. Personally, I don't have any notifications come through on my phone, but on my Mac I have them. If I'm at my desk working, then it will pop up there. One thing I do like though on my phone is you can change the number on the app icon so that rather than just showing you unread messages, it shows you all of the messages in your inbox. And that leads me nicely onto the other thing related to email that I want to talk about, which is Inbox Zero. I only want to cover this briefly because I think that it's something which has been helpful for me. It's simplified the way I deal with email, but there's a lot about Inbox Zero on the internet, and I think that it can be overhyped as well. But the idea is that you keep 0 emails in your inbox. Like that's the default. As a starting point, that might mean archiving all of your emails, but they're still there. You can still get to them. And it means that you don't have to be overwhelmed by always having this massive list there. And so that helps me to focus on what needs to be done as well. You know, if a message needs a reply, it will stay in my inbox until I've replied it, and then I archive it. And one of the things that makes it easier to do this these days is that it's very easy to search your emails. I kind of exclude Outlook from this because Outlook has terrible search functionality, but on the whole, you don't need to spend all of time putting emails into specific folders and subfolders and categories because it doesn't really end up helping you that much. I have a couple of folders for specific things like bills or for like important messages, which I know I'm going to need to refer back to, but everything else just gets archived, which I can do in a quick swipe or one hit of a button. And then if I need it again in the future, I'll search by the sender or the subject or something like that. And I know I'll be able to find it. So that's really helpful because I know that I can still find it, but it's not taking up my headspace and being in the inbox or taking up my time to put into folders.
Yeah, that's true. I like categorizing and I like putting them in folders, but that is true. I don't necessarily go searching for them through the folder. It's searching through the search bar. So yeah, I can kind of see that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do that by default anyway, because it does tend to be quicker. And if you can't remember whether you put it into a folder, you search for it and then you keep searching for it again in the future, because that's just generally a quicker way of doing things.
Yeah.
So when a message comes in, I sort of have to make a very quick decision of what I do with it. So if it needs more of an action to follow it up before replying, then I decide, is it something that I can do straight away? In which case, maybe it stays in my inbox so that I can do that action and then reply to it. If not, if it's an action for later, then I will use that Todoist integration that I talked about, put it onto my actual to-do list rather than a messy to-do list or a mix of to-do lists and other things in my inbox, which mean that I can really easily miss things. If I know that once I've done the action, say I schedule that task for next week, because I know it's something I'm going to do next week, then that's going to pop up on Monday. But also, if I know that after doing that, I'm going to need to reply, I might then snooze the email as well, so that once I've done the task, the email pops up and I can reply to it. And it's all very neat and efficient, at least when I'm disciplined with it. But the nice thing as well with those integrations is that not only does it sort of put the information in there, but it will have a link to the original email as well. So I can click on the link in that Todoist task and it'll open the email up for me straight away. Then that's really helpful.
Mm.
And then the other option is just to snooze the message. So if it's something which doesn't necessarily have an action, but it will need a reply, I can just snooze it and it'll come back in when I actually need to do it. And as it happens, my next week, because you can set the different snoozes so that you have like quick ones that you can pick from. My next week comes in on a Tuesday morning because Monday is my day for childcare. So that's really helpful that I don't have to each time go through and say, come back in on Tuesday morning. I swipe it, click on next week, and it's there. And I think there's definitely a sense of gamification with Inbox Zero, which is really helpful as well, that there's almost this challenge to keep at 0 messages, and especially if you've got that number there, it begins to almost irritate you when you've got like 5 or 6 messages in your inbox, because you know that you've not been organized and you kind of need to keep it to 0. And so it's not something to obsess over, but it's something which I've found helpful as a habit in the way that I do manage emails and manage my tasks.
Yeah.
And for me, that's something which is helpful. You know, the combination of the process of Inbox Zero and the tool of Spark is something which helps me to feel less stress and to be less bothered by email, and it become less of a chore. You know, there's other things I use with email as well. There's a really cool plugin which makes it helpful for messaging lots of people. But I think for now, let's leave it there. I've talked too much about email. But my final tip on email is have a weekly recurring task to check your spam folder, because it's so easy to miss things that are in there, and they could be really important things. So every week that pops up as a reminder to me to check the spam folder, and regularly I'll find things in there that I don't want to miss, especially if you receive emails from a website or the church website, because they're a lot more likely to go to spam anyway. So you maybe, if that's something that you get regularly, you want to do it more than once a week. But just have that as a discipline. And hopefully that's been helpful. Even if you don't use Inbox Zero, even if you don't use Spark, hopefully there are things and processes from that which you can take away and use in your own email.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I do not have Inbox Zero. My inbox is terrifyingly growing at a rapid pace, quicker than I can cull it. So one of my jobs for over the summer.
That's it.
But
select all, archive, done.
Yeah, but there's things I like need to look at or want to read, and one day allegedly I'll read it. Like
I know, and that's my problem as well, is that I never got round to it, and so it's still sitting in my inbox or popping up in my inbox and stressing me out. So using those other tools, like I've got a list in Todoist for those sorts of things where I'm going to read it later, probably never, but at least I'm not having to be reminded of that and not doing it every day.
No, that's true. But no, those are really helpful, and I like the idea of being able to integrate it with Trello or Todoist and stuff like that. That's really helpful. So yeah, thank you very much for those suggestions.
So it's time for your suggestions.
See, now I feel like mine is really not that very helpful. Like it's not a practical tool.
Is it less boring than email?
I mean, yeah, it is. It's fun. Well, kind of fun. I think they're fun. But rather than sharing a tool, I will be sharing more of a resource for comms work. So I wonder, maybe you don't have this, but you know when you like have to come up with some design work for a project or sermon series or event or something, and you're just staring at like a blank page in Canva or Photoshop or wherever, and you just don't know what to do, and it can be so infuriating as you know, you don't really know what you want to include or how you want it to look, you know, without it being too literal, you know, especially if it's more of a kind of not necessarily an event where you know certain dates and things have got to be included, but sort of more like, where do we go with this? You know, sometimes you don't want to do a Christmas design that is red, green and gold and has a Christmas tree and fairy lights, you know, on it, where it's clearly...
Are you hinting at our next bonus episode about Christmas?
Maybe. No, get the bells. You know, or, you know, using a very clearly recognisable and repeated stock photo from Unsplash of a nativity or Christmas presents that were used by... And I'm not like naming and shaming because I use them as well. But then you're like, oh, we're all using the same photo. You know, I want to do something different, something new, but something that obviously can be used in various different formats, social media assets, posters, PowerPoint slides, etc. It'd be so hard, especially if being a designer is not your main job or skill set, which, you know, for me it isn't. Though I thoroughly enjoy that creative side, it's not as easy for me to grab that stuff, and I just don't know how to do funky things in Photoshop. So that's the crisis point. So this is where my resource comes in handy, is quite a lifesaver to my creative drought dilemma. So I love having on my feed of Facebook and Instagram, you know, as well as Pinterest, accounts that are kind of effectively graphic design sources for churches or faith-based content. So a few I particularly love are Pro Church Media, Church Motion Graphics, Church Media Squad, and Ministry Designs. They don't really do kind of necessarily like, here is a poster for an event, but it's more sort of style, colours and font, which for me is the biggest hurdle. And, you know, they'll do something quirky in seasons and you go, oh, that's a really interesting way of presenting something for Easter without it being clearly a sunset cross silhouette or something like that. You know, being able to look through a catalogue of designs, ideas and styles can be incredibly helpful and just spark ideas. And I'm careful not to copy exactly or sort of everything, because most of the time I can't copy them exactly the same. But I might be able to pull a few different elements from either one design or a couple of different designs, whether that's kind of, you know, colours from one or the sort of the layout of text in another. But it's the much needed inspiration and design insight that I want. And like those few that I've mentioned, you know, they aren't the only ones to go to. They're the ones that I really enjoy. And there are plenty others on Facebook, Instagram. There's probably others on Twitter and Threads and everywhere else. So it doesn't need to be them specifically, but I do find those ones particularly helpful for giving me ideas that I might like to use. These, you know, it can be slightly overwhelming sometimes, especially if there is something that you really like, whether an effect or style that you like, but you can't replicate them for yourselves. But, you know, with the advancements of Canva and all the like awesome things that you can do in there, to be honest, you can probably get away with doing something fairly similar for a lot of different styles.
And it's a learning opportunity, isn't it? That I think probably the difficulty I found is that if you see something that you like and want to replicate, but you don't know how to phrase it when you're looking for it, the chances are there's loads of tutorials to achieve that exact effect. But if you don't know, so for ages, I really liked this style where there was things made out of dots, shapes made out of dots, and sort of fading between different colours. And I didn't know what that was called, and so for ages it was like, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to be able to do that. And then as soon as I learned that was called halftone, you learn how to do it, and it's not difficult at all. It's just a case of knowing. And so I think being shown stuff like this is great, but also when it is on a social platform, you can interact, and whether it's with the person who's posted it or with other people in the comments who can say, here, I've made a tutorial for this, or does anyone know what this is called? I'm trying to achieve this. And it's that community thing that comes into it as well. Yeah.
And especially then if you're in, and not even just church, but like comms groups. You could take like a screenshot and say, I'm very inspired by this. Yeah. Does anyone know? And I think you could do that for anything. If you're going already, like this poster I saw, does anyone know kind of technically the design style or something like that? So yeah, that's a good point as well of being able to search that stuff. So I'd recommend checking those accounts out in the first place. We'll link them all in the show notes, you know, but if you find any other accounts that are helpful or inspirational, you know, do let us know, because it's really helpful for us to build a bank of resources that we can share out through our work and through the podcast.
Yeah.
But just remember, for yourself personally, have them to hand so that if you're about to start a new design project, you know, and you think, oh, let's have a look through to see some things that I particularly like or that might be helpful. You know, it's rather than, again, staring at a blank screen, that actually you're going into something and feeling inspired and hopeful, hopefully.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true. And I think that inspiration directly is really helpful for specific projects and that sort of thing. Seeing them just occasionally from time to time in your feed is also, inspirational, but just motivation to see what other people are doing and just being creative and pushing the envelope that should hopefully inspire you to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I guess with the slight asterisk of saying it's okay if your stuff isn't quite as shiny as the stuff that you're seeing professional social media accounts put out, or professional designers who are designing for social media. Like,
and it's literally their only job, and that's all they're doing. They're not it's one part of a part-time voluntary job that they are serving within their church. It is not their full-time job anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's always that thing of we want to promote excellence. We want to see people doing their best to serve God and their church, but also don't judge yourself too harshly if you can't match those same standards.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you for those recommendations. I am aware of a couple of them, but a couple of them I didn't know of, so I'm going to go and check them out. And as we alluded to, we have got a special bonus episode coming up next. We want to be really practical. If you haven't got Christmas ready yet, we're going to help you get ready for Christmas. So come back and listen to that next week. And if you have any questions, or like Hannah said, any other accounts that you think that it would be worth us shouting out, then just send us a message at hello@gppodcast.uk.